Welcome to Created Healthy. I'm Dawn Combs. It's a common idea that God gave us everything we need in nature, but do we believe it enough to walk that out in truth? Often the very same people who say this go looking for answers on how to use food and medicine from man-made sources. Everything man creates comes with a user's manual. Why would God be any different? I challenge you to join me in seeking revelation about our body, mind, soul, and spirit health by digging into His written word and in practicing pure science in the visible world of His creation. Today I'm reading in 2 Kings 4 through 7. There's a lot going on in these 4 chapters. I feel like I can say that every single day. And today I want to focus on the idea of empty hands. It's the first story here in chapter 4 that really took on a life of its own when I read this. But if you're reading through these 4 chapters, there's a lot going on. Elisha actually raises the son of a widow that is taking care of him from the dead in a mirror image, really, from his teacher Elijah, who raises up the son of a widow who's taking care of him. We have a lot of prophecies that are pronounced, a lot of prophecies that are fulfilled. We've seen that a lot throughout 2 Kings. And there's the story of Elisha floating a lost iron axe head on the water that I honestly gave just a couple seconds thought to sort of chasing down, but I really wanted to talk about this first story. So Elisha is being taken care of, and we have this, again, this is a mirror image of his teacher Elijah, who was cared for. God instructed a widow to care for him. And here again we have Elisha following in Elijah's footsteps. And there's a woman, a widowed woman, who doesn't have a lot to her name. So at this time, without a man to provide for her, she is kind of at the whim of her community. And she is in dire straits when she comes to Elisha. And so he tells her to go out and borrow. There's so many pieces to this that are so fascinating. Tells her to go borrow just as many empty jars as she possibly can. He asks her what she has in the house, and she says that all she really has is oil. She has a jar of oil. And so he's having her go out and get as many jars as she can borrow from the community. And so there's a limiting factor here in that the number of jars that she's able to get her hands on is only limited by the number of jars available from within her community, the number of jars that people are willing to loan her. So it's going to depend on the kindness and generosity of her community. Likely is also depending on her reputation to this point. So what she has invested in her community, in kindness to other people, and therefore whether or not people are willing to help her. And then just the work of how many people is she willing to ask for help? How many people is she willing to go? How many doors is she willing to knock on? How much is she willing to haul home? But Elisha puts her about this task, and she gathers and gathers and gathers, and then he has her shut the doors, shut herself and her sons inside, and begin to pour from the original jar that she has. Pour to fill all the jars that she has borrowed. And as the story goes, the original small jar of oil continues to pour and fill each and every one of the borrowed jars. And it only runs out when she runs out of empty jars. And my imagination of this situation where her house is just, every surface is covered with jars, and she's pouring and pouring, and this obviously has a resonance to the miracle of the loaves and the fishes, where Jesus splits up the loaves and the fishes, and they go out and feed a multitude, and still there's leftover. Here the oil is limited. by the time it doesn't just keep running over. So the bottle or the jar that has the oil in it originally doesn't become enchanted in some way that it's just overflowing, and she has to do something with it. So it's not an unmanageable situation. It is a matter of, as long as she has an empty vessel, the oil jar that she has will be able to fill it. And this just so reminded me of times I've seen this happen in my own life. I've been convicted that, I believe that God will hand us what he gives us exactly what we need, exactly what we ask for. He is always wanting to put into our hands what is good. And the tools and the wherewithal and the rewards, all of the things that he wants us to have so that we live the best life and we get the most blessing, and we all of the goodness that is available to us can be given to us directly into our hands. And I have found personally in my life that there's a limiting factor to that. God is willing to put it into our hands, but if our hands are already full, he cannot pour from his hands into ours because we're already full. So this woman, she has gone and got as many jars as she cares to or as she's been able to gather, and the blessing stops when she is full, when all of her receptacles are full. I have resolved, because I found myself in a season holding on to things that I thought I was being prepared. I was protecting myself. I was hedging my bets. I was holding on to things in my hands that I really prized. And I went through a season where I really believe God kept saying, put those things down. I have something else for you. Put that down. I have something else to give you. I want to give you something better. And it's kind of in our nature when we're trying to go our own way to hold on to what we think we highly prize, to hold on to something that we really believe is the best. But I finally, in my experience, the thing that I was holding on to, really, I liken it to it was broken. God finally broke the toy that I was holding on to so that my hands were empty and I could finally receive what he had wanted to give me. It doesn't always work that way, but it has definitely convicted me that I have to be careful about what it is that I believe I need to hold on to. And we do this because we seek security and comfort and that solid feeling of being cared for, and we often believe that we have to do it for ourselves, that it's our responsibility to hold on to what's important to care for ourselves. I think this story with the widow is a really good illustration that God cannot pour from himself into a space that has nowhere to hold it. So without enough jars that are empty, we cannot receive the oil of his Spirit. We cannot receive the abundance of blessings that he's trying to pour onto us. And the reality is, this widow did not have the wherewithal. What she had gathered, the oil that she had, was not enough to sell and support her family. But by the time all of these vessels that she had borrowed were full, she had plenty to support her family and then some. And that is what God desires to do with us. He desires to bless us. And it is in our best interest to seek that stability, that security, that emotional security, that physical security within him, knowing that we don't need to hold on to anything. It's honestly better to stand before God with empty hands so that he can pour into us with an empty, to get rid of the clutter in our minds, in our days, so that he can pour into it. It just goes on and on with where we can take this sort of a ripple looking at it as an instruction on how to be fully healthy, it is important for us to let go of things so that we can be found as an empty receptacle to receive these blessings. I pray that God is ready and waiting. In fact, I know that He is ready and waiting to pour blessings upon you into your life, to put projects and instructions and missions into your hands, and to pour that over your feet, and to put health and reassurance into your mind and your soul and your emotions. I pray that you stand ready without all the clutter in the way, that you are waiting as an empty receptacle to be filled up with that information. Take it from somebody who has had to learn this the hard way over and over again. It's better to have a lot of empty bottles than to hold on to things that we have created here on earth for our own security. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and share with a friend. And I'm always interested in hearing what God is laying on your heart. So drop me a rating or review, or join the conversation on Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube at Dawn Combs Really.